Welcome to Superhero Conversations, a podcast saga with innovation leaders who are at SuperNova, the #1 tech innovation event in Benelux, happening here in beautiful, foggy Antwerp, Belgium. And today I welcome the master of AI creativity, Rory Flynn. Welcome.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you guys having me.
So Rory, I listened to a talk yesterday that you gave to, maybe 1,000 plus youth that was all about AI and how should our generation, and not only our generation, use it in everyday life. So could you please tell me, how did you end up what you're doing now?
Sure. It's I wouldn't say I expected to be here. It was sort of born out of necessity, if that makes sense. So, AI came on pretty strong. I was not necessarily the one that was like, I'm going to take this opportunity to become, really advanced in the AI space. It was just necessarily like I was in a digital marketing agency and I was the head of client acquisition. So a lot of my job was to keep growing the business, but also to keep the business. And we were losing clients very quickly. And a lot of it came down to like, why is this happening? Because in the agency world, you do lose clients. You lose clients fairly consistently if you have a large volume business. Probably it doesn't say a lot for us that we were losing so many at the time, but necessarily it was an outlier. It wasn't something that was normal. So it was like, why is this happening? And we had to really dig into the business. And I think this is where a lot of, coming from a sales background, where the idea is to sort of solve problems and find little holes in people's operations or find holes in things that they're doing. So you can sort of leverage that in terms of how we can sell. Right. And when that happened, it was we had to turn it inward. Instead of it being outward for the first time, it needed to be inward. And we started looking and, of course, what seemed like it was a creative problem, doing a lot of digital marketing assets, whether that for paid media or email marketing, those have to come out at a very high rate and a very high volume. And we just didn't have them. And, our team was just taking old assets and reusing them a million times. The brands we were working with didn't have a lot of assets or creative to work with. So we were just doing the same thing over and over again. And we, the clients seemed like they were upset with some of the design work. And we realized it wasn't really the design work they were upset with. It wasn't our designers' fault. Designers didn't have anything to work with. So we sort of narrowed it down to that being the key piece of it. And when that became sort of evident that it was the really thing that was driving sort of this relationship breaking process or the communication breakdown between client and agency, that I was like, okay, we need to fix this. So once we isolated that problem, it was like, how do we do this? How do we get more images? Do we build an in-house studio? Do we build, a photography studio in our offices? Do we hire outsourced photographers? Do we outsource graphic designers? Margins didn't work for that. Yeah, so It just kind of came along that there was this tool called Midjourney, and this was back in 2022. Back when it was version 3, which was very novice. So we had just started playing with it to see if it could work. It wasn't there. And then around I believe it was November, December of 2022, they upgraded to version 4 and then it became viable. And it was like, oh, we can use this. We can definitely use this. So we wanted to see if we could basically start to utilize it for brand. We started with email marketing. That was where our first insertion point was. Figured if there was ever a place to test something where consumers might not have the most aversion to it, they also probably didn't know that it was going on back then. But if you think about email marketing, it was a perfect medium for us because the tools at the time, AI did not have any sort of upscaling capabilities. So resolution was going to be a problem if it was going to be in a bigger format. You would not put it on a billboard back then. But email typically opened 80 to 90% on mobile. So that was never going to be an issue. There's also a short shelf life on email. And typically, you have around 6 to 8 hour window before no one ever sees it ever again. So it was a great place to sort of test. And also for us, email is a vector. It's not, you don't buy off of email marketing. You use it as a click through to the website. So just how can we get people there quicker, tell a better story with the images that we had. So instead of just forcing in a product image into something like that, we can create an image around the story that we were telling in the email. Just led to better marketing.
So I understand that creating assets requires, and the whole kind of visual identity and the whole kind of photography that you could use in your brand is super expensive because you need to go out into a photo, you do a photo shoot, you need to have a kind of a studio. You probably will not do it in one place, so you need to move around. So it requires a lot of time and money as well.
Yes. Oh, insane. So, even this isn't a replacement for that. I just wanted to say that I'm not saying go out and don't hire photographers and don't hire, videographers. That's all necessary for high quality work. Just in the line of work that we were in, where, something on the, even in the Facebook ads space, right? We could run 30 to 50 pieces of creative a week for some of these brands. And if only 3 of them work, we have to scrap, 27 of those assets and rebuild 27 new ones. So the thought of actually going to hire a photographer, briefing the photographer, finding the set, hiring the models, doing the photo shoot, waiting for the photos to be post-processed, doing the revisions, getting that it could take, a month or two. And then we'd have maybe 100 images and we could burn through those in 2 weeks. So it didn't make sense to keep doing it over and over again, because the way for us to succeed as media buyers and in the email front was we needed variants of images. So we needed to see what worked. We couldn't just guess what worked. And that was the best way. AI just happened to be volume game for us there.
And from there, you saw the problem, you saw the demand, and from there you started Systematiq.ai.
Yes.
So what do you do now?
So now it's a little bit different. I left that company a while back. We got acquired. It became a whole sort of messy situation, and they were not very open to some of the stuff that we were doing. And I was like, I'm going to go try to take this on. So I went to my first speaking gig ever 2 years ago. I was on it was a Affiliate World asked me to be on stage. And I said, sure, I've never been on stage and I don't even know if anyone's going to want to hear what I have to say. And they were like, no, I think people are going to want to hear about it. So I went to this conference with no agenda, no sort of plan. I didn't even have a business at the time. And I was like, if this goes over well, I'll start something. And then it went over very well. And I was not expecting that. And it became more of like, okay, I like this space. I like this because I want to help people, because the idea for us in the beginning was never to replace. It's never to replace. It's always to amplify. So we're looking at, legitimately how we can help design teams who I think are the most underappreciated and most well-deserving people in any business, because they're the ones that put your outward visual marketing, into the world. And that's how everyone perceives you, right? And they oftentimes are just underpaid, overworked. And I was like, how can I help them? Because if I can help them, I can help every brand, right? And that's really where I started to be like, okay, let's see if we can start to build some of the processes that we employed into other people's businesses. And that's typically where it started. But I knew there was going to have to be some learning curve. It couldn't be put a Ferrari into that garage really quick. We had to start very small and very slow.
And if you could summarize, what is the process like? How do you help those clients? How do you help those design teams?
Totally. Typically, so it always comes down to me to problem identification, right? I think that's where most businesses have their biggest issue. They're so myopic in their day-to-day where they don't necessarily see something as being inefficient, or, they're just trying to get things done. And I understand that. I was there. So sometimes it's an outside set of eyes that comes in and just asks why. Like, well, why is that happening? Why are you doing that way? Because that's the way it's always been done. It's like, okay, whenever that seems to be the answer, that's where I sort of dig in. Because it's, there's a lot of different workflows, and some of the, they're all the creative processes are different. They all have different sort of chains of command and how they go up and down. But really, that's where it starts: is finding the friction points, and then applying, and then working backwards and starting to apply a process or tools that would fit that to sort of help get from point A to point B, either easier with less friction, or quicker, or with more creativity.
Yeah, and could you bring some examples of how did you help such a business? How did you use AI to kind of integrate, AI and help creativity?
Totally. So one of the spaces that I didn't expect to be in was probably the legacy major ad agency type environment where they're doing large brand campaign work. Now, I just didn't see that as a place for AI in the immediate, but when I started, we were doing this for production, right? Like end result, customer facing. When I started to do that more, I realized it was more helpful internally from a process standpoint and an operation standpoint. So like, for example, if we're talking about finding a very small piece of a business, if we're going to drive in and then find like a little niche that works. So in these larger campaign, like brand work agencies, it wasn't just like, oh, let's create the ads that go on the billboards. I was like, where's the other friction points? Ideally, I like to settle around, but most of the time when I'm working with them is in the RFP process. So,
And could you explain what it is?
yeah. So request for proposal, these agencies get, they get asked to put together a proposal for major brand work. These could be a couple $1,000s, these could be a couple $1 million. So a lot of times that process then, everyone goes on the attack, right? Like once you accept that, it's like, we're going to have to build 100-page decks. We're going to have to do mock-ups, storyboards, mood boards, like mock ads, all this stuff. So it's a big undertaking to get there. But the real value there is not that it's potential business. It's also potential loss because you spend a lot of time and human capital on it. And if you don't get it, that's just be zero ROI, right? So if you do win it, then yeah, it's great. But that's where I was saying, if we could find spots for AI in this place here, where we can sort of hedge the risk on the downside, so that if we're spending less time there and we're getting more creative work out of the tools, and your team isn't as sort of bogged down by this, then the upside's even higher on that side. And also we can be a little bit more visually explosive and a little bit more communicative in what we want to do while using AI.
Yeah, and absolutely. And so you kind of mitigate that problem of doing all of this work for those requests, where actually most of the kind of business proposals comes to you.
Yeah.
But you kind of minimize the the effort that you put into that, so you can actually kind of do more inbound and outbound.
Totally. And it's even, it's not even for the lack of, or like less effort there. It's also just being able to, from internally, communicate ideas. Oftentimes between, people that are doing the creative work and the people that are managing the creative work, there's oftentimes like a vision that sort of should be transferred, but sometimes it's not. And this to me became an easier way to talk to people by using things like Midjourney, or using things like, any of the video generators, things like that, to be like, here's my idea tangibly, not written on a piece of paper. This is how I want it to look. And then that feedback loop can be very quick. That can be, yes, I like that. No, I don't like that. Versus like, I have an idea of what this could look like. And then we go a week down the line and, maybe I don't like that anymore. So just a way for us to make decisions quicker. And it also aided in the human communication, which is like the ultimate goal, everything I'm trying to do.
Absolutely. And how do you kind of ensure that this human communication stays human? How do you ensure it? Because now I could imagine that, every, a few months there comes a new model and it becomes more photorealistic. But as if when you don't have that human kind of in between taking that picture or drawing that design, it becomes artificial.
Yeah.
How do you kind of tackle this problem that many of your clients, I do believe that, they face this problem?
Yeah. I would say that's why I pivoted more towards the internal work, because that's always sort of been my feeling and my sort of passion. Is I was a designer. So I was a graphic designer, failed, I would say, in my own eyes. Did it for many years, was never excellent at it. I never had time to like fully put in to really get good at it. Just like doing projects for people and trying to get things done, which always seemed like it was how worked for everyone else. Want to take risk, want to go learn more, but at the same time, you have to get paid. You have to make money. So you have to just like get things done. So that's why I was like, this is internally better, because I can take people that are already skilled and give them more opportunity. Not just like, how do we get rid of the designers and not pay them? It's like, let's give them more opportunity to be better, give them more options in terms of the creative direction they can go, and let them get there quicker, so that they can actually, I like to call it fail quicker. There's like a big line of delineation when you're designing of what needs to get done and how creative you can be. Because if you want to go test an idea, it's like something while you were using Photoshop, maybe. Like if I wanted to test something super creative, it might take me 2 or 3 hours to do that. If it doesn't work, that's just, you're buried. So there's always like, you can't take that risk because of the time that's associated with it. And now it's like, how can we do that? We can go a lot of different directions, but it's just finding ways you have to essentially change management within a lot of businesses. I hate
Absolutely.
to sound like a consultant there, but it's like what it is.
Absolutely. And how far do you think we are from actual all of the images on billboards in our Instagram, Facebook ads actually being generated by AI? You mentioned that you mainly kind of use it now internally, but will there be a time when you think absolutely or most of the photographs, videos that we see are done by AI?
Totally. I think it's gonna happen. I'm not gonna be particularly excited about it, to be honest. I like the idea that people are using this stuff and they're using it as a way to get more, just get things done. I think people will use it the wrong way, which is just like, oh, we can do this with AI, so we'll do it with AI, instead of like, we can use AI because it's more creative and brings our vision. So yeah, I think you're going to see that. You're going to see it. It's going to be sort of like an even playing field, though. If you think about it, what it is now, let's go back 5 years. It's still just like whatever was the best visually won, because everyone had the same tools. I think once everyone gets up on the same level of tool and everyone has the same opportunity to create, where the prompting isn't as hard, or it's not as intuitive, or is not as intuitive as it used to be to sort of get to an end result, then yeah, the idea still wins. So whoever can bring the best ideas out are still going to win, whether it's AI or just standard regular photography, graphic work, things like that. But I think everyone's going to be using it in some way, shape, or form. I don't see it as a bad thing. I know a lot of people do, but I feel like there's really an opportunity, because if we're being honest, photographers and graphic designers were my biggest haters early on. The first haters, the original. I wasn't trying to blow smoke up AI. I wasn't being like, it's the best thing that's ever happened. I'm like, this is really cool and it helped me in my work. I'm like, I don't know how anyone couldn't be interested in this, considering.
Absolutely.
And now now a lot of them come around. They see sort of the usability of it, not just for like taking their jobs, but in their own space.
Absolutely. And for all the businesses that are integrating AI systematically into their operations now, what are the common pitfalls and mistakes that you see companies make that those companies who are listening to us now could avoid?
I would say just assuming that AI is easy, especially in the current form of what it is. Yeah, if you know what you're doing, it can be easy, but a lot of teams don't know what they're doing. And I think I've seen this in a number of instances where people have contacted me and said, I'm looking to get rid of my design team or my design agency. I want to do this. And I'm sort of turned off by that. I just don't think that's the right way to go about it. And I think that's definitely something where we see it as a way to, I think some people see it as a way to really like, oh, let's trim our costs. Let's just trim our costs and do this on a cheaper way because we need to make better margins. It's like, yeah, sure, that's okay. But I don't think you're going to get the best out of it by doing it that way. I don't think you're going to get the best work. I think you'll get adequate work out of it. But if you don't invest in it and you don't really have if you don't really fully dedicate time and passion and get people interested in it, and you just like, oh, we'll use ChatGPT to write all of our emails, like you're going to see the results on the other end, because the consumers, they're going to understand what you're doing too.
Okay. And as we know, the models are evolving so rapidly that we really need to kind of keep up with all of the technology. What would be your advice to companies, to employees, to everybody, to actually keep up with the pace of the evolving technologies? Because as soon as you learn one thing, the new thing absolutely comes. So what's the process like? How do you keep up?
So the straight answer is I don't keep up. It's too much. And for me, who's even in it every day, and my job is to basically learn, right? There's too many things. I can't be a genius in all of them, right? I can't be a expert in every single tool. So the thing that I've sort of noticed now is a lot of tools are built off at least similar infrastructure. They function a very similar way. So to me, it's always been about, can you find one tool, get obsessed with it? Can you find one tool, get really obsessed with it, learn how to master it, something that's probably more general in nature, and then it has a transferable skill set. So because Midjourney was the first thing I went in on, and Midjourney is super intricate in terms of the controls that you have and the parameters you have and the way you can manipulate images, that when it was time to, oh, let me try these other image generators, it's very easy to pick it up because they work the same way. Maybe not as many features, but they have this similar prompting structure. They have a similar way to go about creating images, similar way to sort of craft and post-produce them. So my advice is always, if you can get good at something like one LLM, large language model, ChatGPT, Claude, Llama, anything along those lines, Grok even, you can get good at one image generator, something that can generate images and you can create visuals, and one video generator. Those have like transferable skill sets to just about every other tool.
Okay. So kind of this agility and adaptability, when you learn one thing, that's the process and the kind of pattern of implementing it with a new technology is quite similar.
Yeah. And the other thing I will say, and I try to preach this, which sounds, I don't know, naive maybe, is that find a tool to have fun with. Like if you can't, the first thing I do when we're trying to institute this stuff is we go and try to do fun things. I don't try to be like, let's make this ad for a soap company, like for one of your clients. It's like, let's go put yourself in a 1980s like kung fu movie poster and see how that looks, right? You start to realize that people just, when they start to see it and use it for practical application, like daily non-work stuff, like how can you use ChatGPT in a functional way that's not for actual work. I remember using it when I had my daughter, she was, newborn. I didn't know how to like understand things when I was a parent. So I'm asking ChatGPT questions, like co-parenting my child.
Yeah.
I'm giving it just like screenshots of my baby monitor. I'm like, is the temperature okay? Is she swaddled properly? Like basically, am I gonna ruin this child in the first like 2 weeks of life? And it's giving me all the things. So, it's simple things like that. When that starts to become like, oh, ChatGPT is now integrated into my outside life, it becomes easier to think about the problems you can solve or the directions you can go in your life. Or in your work life. So yeah. And then, the images side of things too. Very fun to just play with it and like really have fun. Once you find some other people too, a little bit of community that does it, you have fun sharing stuff and you have fun like going back and forth with people on the random things that you create. So I think it brings a lot of community to a company, to even just friend groups, things like that. Absolutely. But there's I could probably talk about that for like 6 hours.
Absolutely. So we talked about the past, the present, but we haven't yet talked about the future. So what do you think the future holds ahead of us in terms of generative AI, in terms of the creative part of the companies? What could we expect? We already told that all of the images could be theoretically generated, but what do you think is the next kind of stepping stone?
It's even just over the last couple weeks, it's sort of exploded. There was a new workflow that I saw that I'm pretty sure is just going to be the way that things function from now on. I'm going to use an acronym because it's so new to me. I don't even know what it means. I just know what it does. It's called MCP. I found out about this like last week. And for the coding, for anyone that's in development, probably knows exactly what I'm talking about. And I probably sound very, very childish, just not knowing what it means yet. But I saw what it could do, and I tested it out just without even thinking of reading what it could do. Just like let's download the code, let's put it into my computer, and let's upload it and get it going. And there's a way to control Blender, which is a 3D software, with Claude. So I can just type into Claude as an LLM. I can just type in like build me a castle. And then I'm watching it render in live in 3D on my, the next side of my screen, which I think is absolutely wild. It's world building. I think there's going to be an opportunity to build really immersive environments. And it's not going to be as hard as it seems. I think everyone's going to have an opportunity and a path to create. And I'm really excited about sort of where that goes, because that's a whole new, for me on the marketing side, I see that as, what does that mean for the traditional sort of marketing vectors? Like, what does that mean for email marketing, for social media? Everything is 2D right now. You think about looking at your phone, everything is 2D. It's just you swipe on your phone in 2D. What happens when things become 3D? When we're able to immerse ourselves into brand environments that can be built like that, experiential, things like that. Everyone can have their own sort of world in a sense. Very Ready Player One, if you've ever read that book or saw that movie. Sort of feels like that's possible, not too far in the distant future.
Not too far. I mean, I think it's one of the most exciting times that a human could possibly ever live in.
Yeah.
Rory, let's wrap up this conversation with two questions. What do you think is the AI superpower that everybody should learn?
It's a good one. The AI superpower that everyone should learn. I mean, I'm going to take my bias into this because I think I've seen the most sort of creative spark is with a tool like Midjourney or an image generator. Just because when you can take your thoughts and then imprint them into something, like when you can map your imagination and then like there it is, I think it's a great tool to have, because if you know how to generate that, you're going to have just like a wonderful time, not for business, but for personal. Like I find it to be super satisfying to just like let my imagination run wild. I feel like a kid again when I use it. And I think that's really like, everyone's an artist. I know that sounds sort of crazy, but I think everyone's an artist. I've found people that were accountants that are exceptional at what they do now with AI, because now they've been provided either the time or the access to a tool that can let them be creative. So I think we're going to create a whole new generation of artists if people are just into these tools.
My last question is maybe the hardest, maybe the most difficult one, but Rory, what is your dream?
My dream. It's tough. It changes every 2 weeks. Used to the older tech development cycle where it's like, okay, new developments every year. Now it's every 2 weeks, and I find myself with sort of dream ADD, I guess. I was like with the new one every week. I would ultimately like to build the largest online community of AI empowered designers, not just for AI, just designers, creatives, anything in that space, so that we can have a shared community, continue learning, help each other, build this whole thing up, make it do it the right way, not to give this just to everyone who wants to take away from those jobs, but really to build up the the superpower of the industry. So that's really what I'm looking forward to doing.
Rory, it's just fantastic. As I mentioned, it's a really exciting time that we live in. So thank you for this conversation. It was really fun talking to you.
Yeah, man. No, I appreciate you having me. Excellent conference, excellent environment, really cool people. This has been really awesome experience for me to come here. So I'm glad I got out of New York and came over.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, man. Thank you.